Within minutes before our first sale, we were kicked out by security. How funny is that we were already divvying up the profits before there were any? I think what I learned in Flowers for Dreams is you need less money than you think.
Stephen Dyme was 19 years old, selling flowers out of a cart outside his own school graduation, 1 year after he had stood on that same stage and delivered the commencement speech. He didn't know anything about flowers, and he didn't have a business plan. What he had was a friend with a truckload of surplus flowers, a fanny pack full of cash, and that same summer, a volunteer job packing backpacks for kids who otherwise wouldn't have one. He put the two together on a bar napkin, split the profits 3 ways before there were any profits to split, and built one of the first B Corps in the country before most people had ever heard the term. 15 years later, his company has given away nearly $2 million to grassroots nonprofits across Illinois and Wisconsin. Rising Forward tells the story of social entrepreneurs who build businesses that solve real problems in their communities. I'm Shannon Sims. This is Rising Forward.
So, tell me, what time did you wake up that first morning when you were getting ready with that first cart? What, you're 19 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me.
I wasn't born an early riser, but it's funny you asked that. Our graduation business, our street peddling of flowers was my first foray into the dawn hours. But our very first delivery was to my quaint little suburb in Chicago, Illinois. My parents grew up in Wilmette, and they had a nice 2-car garage, and I had a big semi-truck of flowers delivered down our alley. And the early morning hours, get a call, and all of a sudden I'm unloading boxes and boxes of flowers, and that's where my flower journey began.
So walk me through the first sale. You remember that?
Yeah, so a little step back is I met a wonderful guy in college. I went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison and didn't know anything about flowers when I arrived, but I met a friend who came from kind of the floral industry and a long lineage of floral wholesalers. We called his dad the Don of the Boston Flower Exchange. And when he was a kid with his brother, he would work at his dad's wholesale florist, ring up florists at the register, pack flowers in boxes. And at the end of the week, a wholesale flower company in particular has lots of waste, lots of spoilage. So he had the kind of enterprising idea, him and his brother, to take the excess flowers that would have otherwise gone to the dump from their dad and sell them on the street. And so that's where my first spark for the idea came. I needed to make some money to pay for college. And when I was at school, I kind of did every job that I could while I was there. And then I came upon this idea. I was like, hey, I'm sure there's surplus flowers in Chicago as well as Boston. So could you ship flowers on, at the excess to Chicago, or where can I get them from? And so that was where it really started. That big freight semi truck pulling down our quaint little alley was excess flowers from Boston, and it was sent to me on credit and good faith.
In the suburbs of Chicago.
In the suburbs of Chicago is where it started. And the question, our first sale, it's interesting. The very first event I went to is Ravinia Festival. I don't know if I should be putting this out there on air, but Ravinia wasn't so kind to random, unpermitted, unlicensed
street peddlers.
Exactly. Who could blame them? But my friends and I showed up on little carts full of flowers, fanny packs with cash for change, little hand towels to keep the flowers dry. When we passed it to a parent, we were trying to sell at a high school graduation that was hosted at Ravinia. And within minutes before our first sale, we were kicked out by security. And so I was early on. I had an early adversity into this flower gig, and we went right back at it. All of a sudden, I had all these flowers. It's like I have a few days before they die. So we went to the next graduation that was happening in May, and the next graduation that was happening that we could find online in a publicly available calendar. And, just by persistence, all of a sudden we started selling more and more flowers at more and more graduation ceremonies.
And what did some of the parents say? Again, you're 19 years old. You got 4 or 5 people working for you. at the graduation?
Well, the funniest version of that story is my senior year of high school. I was the class president, so I got to give the speech that ended our graduation.
You were the valedictorian?
No, class president.
Oh,
Not
class
to be
president. So,
confused.
salutatorian?
No, neither.
No.
Neither.
He said, I'm not going to take any of that.
Neither. Just class president voted on by the students. And so I got to give that was kind of voted to give the graduation speech. I gave it, and the parents who were in the attendance and the teachers probably thought I was filled with potential. But the next summer, I showed up at the same graduation, my high school's graduation. Now as a freshman in college, and I was out front hawking flowers on the street, sweaty in a polo with the fanny pack, with the cart, wheeling up and down, and all the same teachers and parents were like, "You all right? Everything okay with you? How was your first year in college?" And so I often look back at that moment because I don't remember in that moment feeling embarrassed or humiliated that a year after the graduation speech, and we were at a big high school, so the speech was at Welsh Shrine Arena, which is Northwestern University's basketball stadium. So there's a lot of people I recognized, but I think one of my early, I guess, strengths was unafraid of humiliation. Because I don't recall being uncomfortable in that situation, and I sold lots of flowers that day. So my relationships to my old teachers worked. Maybe they felt bad for me.
Part of business, relationships.
Yes, that's right.
So you're making money, clearly, doing this hustle. But tell me the moment you decided, you know what? Instead of keeping all of the profits, I'm going to give some of it away.
You're listening to 89.7 WUWM. This is Rising Forward Stories of Change, and I'm Shannon Sims, talking with Stephen Dyme, owner of Flowers for Dreams. In the beginning, Stephen was willing to look ridiculous to turn a profit, hawking flowers in front of people who the year before had watched him give the commencement speech. The next decision he and his co-founder made would surprise most, giving away a quarter of everything they earned that summer. They did the math on a bar napkin.
Yeah, so the truth is it was really opportunistic. The first summer, again, I didn't have a business plan. This wasn't intended to be a business. I never knew much about flowers. I wasn't a business student. But that first summer, we were making money as street peddlers. We had to deal with a local gas station to sell flowers on Mother's Day. We're at lots of graduations and dance recitals. And conveniently, that same summer, I was starting this flower hustle. A really close friend of mine had started a nonprofit, a student-run nonprofit out of Northwestern University that was called Supplies for Dreams. And what they did was collect backpacks and school supplies for low-income Chicago public school students in need. And his very first summer, we all met in his parents' garage, true story, and collected, brought backpacks and school supplies, collected some that were gently used, and we put them all together and then delivered them to the students that he had connected with, elementary school students. And that was my light bulb of, here I am selling flowers to more fortunate schools as a gift for their graduate, and I'm giving backpacks at the end of my summer to less fortunate students in schools. And I was like, what if I could pair these two together, make some version of a business out of it, and then go back to all the schools who kicked me out or wrote me tickets or banned me from their premises and say, hey, we were actually here the summer prior. What if we teamed up? We could give you a cut of the sales for your own student gift or senior class project or something. And we're going to give a backpack with school supplies on every bouquet that we sell to a guest.
Wow. But was there a week or a month when you thought, I don't know if this is going to survive, this business model that I have of making and giving?
Luckily for me at the time, it was really low stakes. I wasn't intending to start a business. I didn't have a family that relied on my income or the rest. I was trying to make some money to pay for school. And if it didn't work, I was going to move on to the next hustle and the next job. And so I didn't have a long view at this point. I was just trying to sell as many flowers as I could, pocket as much of it as I can, and then really accidentally make a difference in some of these kids' lives who are receiving school supplies and backpacks. Because it was very surprising to me on those first deliveries of the backpacks. So our first year of doing it formally, we donated over 4,000 backpacks, complete with school supplies, to 4,000 students. And I was like, we actually rented a school bus to deliver them during orientation for these elementary schools. And it had this kind of almost like deceptive power in my mind. I was like, wow, like these were kids that were otherwise like sharing textbooks with a sibling, or they didn't have a backpack at all of their own. And that was really the reason summer after summer I kept going. The contracts were validation, but the giving was really my motivation. So that's where Flowers for Dreams, the business, was born, out of that profit and purpose working together.
I love the P's. I love alliteration. You spoke earlier about how your friend who had the wholesaling business in Boston was able to give you a truck full of flowers on credit. Was there any one person, though, who believed in this before there was proof that it worked for you?
No, there wasn't anything to believe in. I mean, this was truly a forgettable side hustle. And it wasn't until I think where I learned that this was real was, of course, the contracts with schools, but through my peers, my friends, when they started saying, oh, hey, like I've got an internship by day, but I heard you guys are selling these flowers on weekends. Could I get a job? And all of a sudden, by the end of college, we'd formalized it into a little seasonal business, and I was employing lots and lots of my friends. And that's where I met my co-founder, who was like the best flower peddler of them all. And that was really validating and confirming. So no one really believed in the business as it, in and of itself, but the power of employing your peers and them seeing that, them making income from this, and that was really motivating as well to say, hey, there's something here.
Here we are to 2026. Was there any moment of your, profit for purpose where that 25% of donating to a business was like, ooh, we're really squeezing the business to make sure we can make the commitment on that 25% profit?
Too many times to count.
Purpose, rather?
Too many times to count. I'm grateful in hindsight that we were so naive to incorporate this silly 1/4 of all our profits donated to the community, to charity, at the beginning. Because had I known more about business, had I known more about the obstacles in front, had I known that it would be hard to make profit for a long time, we probably wouldn't have designed the model that way. But it really is, I think, the most startling, impactful, and differentiating thing about our business is that since the beginning, we've given greater than 1/4 of our profits to the community. And it started really, this is also a true story. My co-founder and I, a bar napkin and a bar in Northfield, which is near Wilmette, Illinois. And after one of those graduations, we're talking about, should we do this business full time? And literally making a little pie on a napkin and being like, how are we going to give up the profits? How funny is that we were already divvying up the profits before there were any? And that's where we came up with. It was going to be 1/4 to us, 1/4 to our staff, which has also existed. We have a profit sharing program for our managers, 1/4 to the community, and 1/4 to maybe future investors or partners that would potentially need to come into the business. And that kind of model has existed to this day. It's very simple. It scared most investors because they said, wait, so you're going to have 1/4 of the community before we would see anything?
That napkin math held. Stephen and his co-founder took the business model and opened Flowers for Dreams in Chicago. A few years in, they decided it was time to expand across the Illinois border into Wisconsin. Stephen shares why the Brew City was a perfect fit for his Petals and Purpose business.
Yeah, the truth is the logistics, the shared culture, the shared customers, the distance made it kind of a clear favorite to be somewhere outside of Chicago that we might have some success. We started to deliver bouquets here from Chicago because we had a lot of customers that had billing zip codes in Wisconsin, but were ordering for their friends or family in the Chicago area. And so right out of the gate, because of the Chicago success we'd had, there were already some customers to start when we came to Milwaukee. And then in 2018, and had great success selling our flowers at the Milwaukee Public Market and bringing our flower truck to sell flowers also on the street, just like we used to on our flower carts. And we're really embraced by the city.
So tell me the day you decided Pittsburgh Avenue was the location.
I think Walker's Point to this day represented a lot of what Flowers for Dreams is like. There's so much history. There's an industrial, entrepreneurial maker community there that we fit right into. It's much like the one we had started in Chicago. It's a really rich and diverse culture in Walker's Point. Of course, rich history of pride, which is, that community is well represented in Flowers for Dreams. So there are so many perfect fits about Walker's Point and Pittsburgh. Loved the ice cream at Purple Door, made it even easier. And so, yeah, we opened up there not too long after the public market, had both for a little while, and then kept growing in Walker's Point.
All right, let's switch gears and talk about B Corp and your B Corp certification. Where were you when you found out? Because this is not an easy certification to receive.
So I first learned about B Corps in Chicago at the Chicago Ideas Week in 2011. Now, I remember this very well. They had a social entrepreneurship fellowship for emerging social entrepreneurs around the country. And really quick, Chicago Ideas Week was this grand convening, kind of like a South by Southwest, but in the Midwest, grand convening of thinkers and ideators and music. And I had never seen anything like it. I decided to attend as I was kind of thinking about starting Flower Streams. So this predates Flower Streams a bit. I was starting to build the business model, think about business, and if I wanted to commit to this after college, this flower concept. And I learned about social entrepreneurship. Never heard the term. I was barely familiar with entrepreneurship as a term, truthfully. I'd heard it, but I didn't really know what it meant.
You were doing it for a few years, though.
I was doing it, but kind of unknowingly, unwittingly. And then I learned about social entrepreneurship, and I was doing that too. I mean, we were this miniature case study in profit and purpose working together. The purpose in our giving model was kind of the fuel for our business, but then the profits, the sales and the profits from our business were actually fundamentally fueling the purpose. And so that was a really cool relationship that I was learning about between profit and purpose. And I decided that's the type of business I was going to build. And so I learned about B Corps then. It was a couple years after starting Flowers for Dreams that we, decided to embark on the arduous path of becoming one. We ended up being one of the first 800 to 1,000 B Corps worldwide. And we were the first flower B corporation, florist B corporation, which was really cool. And now it's a global community of over 10,000 businesses, I think almost or a little over 1 million employees globally. And it was really excited to be part of that kind of like first wave of B Corps committing to do good in business.
And I think it's more than just saying corporate responsibility, right? There's a governing body that holds you accountable to that B Corp stamp. Let's circle back around. Imagine there's a 19-year-old listening to this with a cart and an idea. What would you say to him or her?
Do it. Try it. Get out there. As I mentioned, one of my, I think, earliest identifiable skills was just trying something, unafraid of humiliation, willing to take a risk. I wasn't very conscious of that skill, but when I reflect back on my 19-year-old self and maybe what set me apart was just willing to try it. Of course, I accumulated more skills along the way in building the business and formalizing the business and creating this purpose structure. But really, you have to start in order to do anything.
Is it fair that you were building the plane as you were flying?
Yes, no doubt. No doubt.
And there's nothing wrong with that? Is that what you're saying?
No, nothing wrong with it. As I said, I think our naivete at the very beginning of creating Flowers for Dreams was really our greatest strength rather than a crutch. Our inexperience led us to some of our best decisions because we weren't jaded by the way business had to be done. We allowed ourselves to be really idealistic. And I think the business has benefited from that to this day.
Okay. So, for someone who's listening, sitting on their idea, what should they do in the next 24 hours?
Try it. Sell one thing first. I think what I learned in Flowers for Dreams is you need less money than you think. Remember, in my story, as I was telling you, is I originally started the business to make money to pay for school and to pay my way. And I didn't have any thought about, putting money into the business or if I made money, it was really just, can I and I make a few bucks off every order. In fact, a really quick story is I remember my mom was wonderfully supportive of my business. She let me live at home for a little bit as I got started with the formal business after college. But she also made me do an exercise that I'll always remember, which was how many $35 bouquets do I have to sell to be able to pay for rent and move out of her house? And
how many?
Yeah, it was a lot. I hadn't done that thinking beforehand, but I think I benefited from not doing that thinking, because that was really daunting. I think people talk about putting the cart before the horse. I think people think about the future before the present. And I think that old adage of seeing the forest for the trees isn't always the most wise. You got to see the trees in front of you. And if you get too daunted or intimidated by some faraway obstacle or some distant future, you'll never start. You'll never ship that first thing. You'll never sell, that first thing. And I think that was one of our biggest strengths in hindsight. We are just over 250, closing in on 300 almost entirely grassroots nonprofits, which we define as essentially small budget nonprofits. These are staffs of, in some cases, one full-time employee at the nonprofit to maybe up to 50 employees. Yeah, just over 250 nonprofits that have received almost $1.9 million of donations from the sale of our flowers.
And what's the goal?
Keep going. Keep
it.
going. When we had a big party, when we'd reached $1 million donated, it almost met up with our first decade in business. And most of these are in checks of $3,000 and $13,000 and maybe $30,000, but these are small 4 and 5 figure grant checks from our own foundation now that receives the quarter of our profits. But we're almost at $2 million donated to almost 300 grassroots nonprofits across the Midwest.
Stephen Dyme has a favorite story about what it actually takes to start something. His mom made him do the math. How many $35 bouquets just to cover rent? Not to get rich, just enough to move out. That's the scale this whole story runs on. One bouquet, one backpack, one graduation at a time. Until it turns into a business that crossed a state line and nearly $2 million given away to grassroots nonprofits right here in Wisconsin and Illinois. He told us, don't look too far down the road. See the trees in front of you, not the whole forest, or you'll never start. You'll never ship the first thing. You'll never sell the first bouquet. Fast forward, he's still following his own advice. Stephen's one of the entrepreneurs we're spotlighting this season on the B side. Business owners building something that's good for more than just the bottom line. We've got more of these stories coming. I'm Shannon Sims. Until next time, keep rising. This week's episode was produced by Mic'd and Ready Media. Production services by Story First Media Group, helping purpose-driven organizations discover the stories only they can tell. Our audio and videographer, Dwight Cannon. Our associate producer, Brianna Sitkowski. If you like what you heard, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rising Forward Stories of Change. Full episodes drop every Tuesday on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast.